With a crash and a bang, Thomas and Diesel smashed Harry and Bert right through the back of the engine sheds. Stones and timber flew everywhere. Bust my buffers. Uh-oh. Then Henry arrived. I've come to collect my train. Your train isn't ready. Then the yard manager arrived. Thomas, you have pushed Mavis off the rails, and Harry and Bert through the back of the engine shed. Thomas felt worse than ever. Oh no, it's all my fault. I should have done my job and not raced against Diesel.
Come on, let's have one more race.
No, Diesel, I have an important job to do. Thomas puffed over to Henry. I'll fill your cars as fast as I can. Your train will soon be ready. And Thomas chuffed quickly away. Thomas felt terrible. I must work very hard to put everything right, he thought to himself. Thomas shunted the cars under the hut. Soon they were all filled. And Henry huffed happily away with his train. Then Thomas collected Rocky. Rocky lowered Mavis back onto the tracks. I'm sorry I bashed you. I was trying to win a race. Mavis was relieved to be back on the track. Next, Thomas shunted Rocky over to the sheds. Harry and Bert were soon back on the rails. I'm sorry I biffed you. I should have done my job instead of trying to be the fastest. Then Diesel rolled in. We must clear all the cars of broken stones.
Yeah, sure, Thomas.
At last, the freight cars were loaded with broken rubble from the sheds. So together, Thomas and Diesel shunted the freight cars as quickly as they could. Finally, all the jobs were done.
We still don't know who's the fastest. Let's have another race.
All right, but this time we must go forwards. So the two engines raced away to the quarry gates. And they both arrived together. Now Diesel would see the photographer, and he would find out about the new photograph. So Thomas wished lots of steam. It billowed from his boiler and filled the whole station. So Diesel didn't see the photographer, and he trundled straight by. The steam has made my camera wet. I'm sorry, sir. We'll have to wait for it to dry. Tell the engines to come back later to Tidmouth. So all the engines came back later, instead of doing their jobs. At last, the photographer was ready. No one had noticed Diesel wasn't there. Thomas was very relieved. But just then, Diesel oiled round the bend. Diesel was surprised to see all the engines. He screeched to a halt. Rolls of bunting went everywhere.
No one told me there was another photograph.
But I asked Thomas to tell everyone. All the engines looked at Thomas. Thomas felt terrible. Sir Topham Hatt was very cross.
Gordon, you were meant to pick up Mr. Giggles, the famous clown. Emily, you were meant to pick up the brass band. And James, you were meant to pick up the bunting and decorations. None of you arrived, so Diesel had to do all your jobs. And now he's late to do his own work.
Thomas was very upset. It's all my fault, sir. I didn't want Diesel to know about the new photograph. In the last one, he moved right in front of me, on purpose.
I did not. The photographer told me to move.
I did. Perhaps you rolled too far. Thomas knew then he'd made a mistake. I'm sorry, Diesel. I was wrong to think you did it on purpose. And I'm very sorry for causing all this trouble, sir. Soon all the engines were lined up. The new photograph was taken. Sir, if I do all Diesel's jobs, can he collect the new billboard?
That's a wonderful idea, Thomas.
Diesel agreed. For the rest of the day, Thomas worked hard. He did all Diesel's jobs. And Diesel picked up the new billboard just in time for the celebrations. It was a wonderful party. There were clowns and a brass band. Diesel and Thomas agreed that the new billboard was the best billboard they'd ever seen.
I'm not the man in the hills. I'm the miller.
Thomas could see the miller was no longer white. All the flour had blown off him. Thomas was upset. The miller was worried.
I still have to make the birthday cake for the party.
And I have to make the ice cream. The little engines were cross.
You said you'd bring the best present of all. Now Mr. Percival doesn't have any presents, and we're all late.
Thomas felt terrible. I wanted to find the most special present all on my own. But all I've done is spoil the party for everyone, especially for Mr. Percival. So Thomas asked Scarloe and Rheneas to take the party tent. Please, hurry. The dairyman and the miller boarded Thomas. And Thomas raced quickly away. Thomas was determined to put everything right. Thomas delivered the dairyman to the dairy to make the ice cream. And he delivered the miller to the mill. At last, the cake was baked, and Thomas chuffed quickly away with it. Thomas met Freddie at a junction. Freddie was on his way to the party. I have to get the birthday cake to the party as quickly as I can. Please, help me find the shortcut. Freddie was happy to help.
Come on now, follow me.
And together they puffed quickly away. Thomas and Freddie stopped at the Green Hills Junction. Suddenly, Thomas gasped. Bust my boiler! Look! There, all in white, was a man. He was carved into the hillside. He shone in the moonlight.
It's the man in the hills! Thomas, you found him!
Suddenly, Thomas had an idea. Freddie, please bring Mr. Percival here with all the engines. And Freddie raced away. Soon, all the engines were gathered by the man in the hills. The engines gasped, and everyone was delighted. There, far away and high up in the high hills, Sir Handel was ready to tell his story. And Mr. Percival had the best birthday present ever. From all of the engines, right at the end of the dockside, so Thomas had to wait. Just then, Percy arrived. Hello, Thomas. Percy saw that Thomas was collecting the brass band. He was very upset. Why didn't you tell me, Thomas? I tell you everything. Thomas felt terrible. He tooted his best friend's whistle. But Percy didn't whistle back. Thomas felt worse than ever. He puffed out of the docks with the brass band. Thomas arrived at Great Waterton. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting to welcome the brass band. Thomas still felt very unhappy. He had let his best friend down.
Thomas, you must come back at the end of the concert to pick up the brass band.
Then an idea flew into Thomas's funnel. Sir, can Percy pick up the band?
Percy is delivering the mail.
If I pull Percy's mail cars, then could he pick up the band? Sir Topham Hatt agreed. So Annie and Clarabelle were uncoupled, and Thomas steamed off to find his best friend. Now Thomas really wanted to find Percy, but Percy was nowhere to be found. Thomas was worried. The concert would finish soon, and the band would be waiting. Then Thomas saw Percy. He was waiting at a signal. I'm sorry I didn't tell you I was picking up the band. I'm busy. I have to pull the mail. I have something to tell you. I'll pull the mail for you. Then you can go and pick up the brass band and take them to the docks. Percy beamed from buffer to buffer. Thank you, Thomas. He was very excited. Thomas buffered up to Percy's mail cars and quickly pulled away. He was pleased to help his best friend. Percy steamed off to pick up Annie and Clarabelle. He couldn't wait to collect the brass band. Later, Thomas puffed into Great Waterton. Percy was waiting for the band. You are my best friend, Percy. From now on, I will always tell you everything. And they tooted their best friend's whistle for everyone to hear. Gordon biffed straight into them. The logs started to roll down the hill.
Bust my buffers. Those logs will block the lower track. I must stop Stanley.
But Gordon didn't know which track to take to find Stanley. Gordon was lost. What have you done? Gordon knew his shortcut hadn't worked. Now he needed to ask for help.
Can you help me, Ben? I have to get to the lower track as fast as possible.
Of course. Ben was happy to help. Soon the track was clear, and Gordon steamed away. He had to warn Stanley. Then Gordon arrived at a fork in the track. He didn't know which way to go next. Gordon saw Oliver and Toad puffing towards him.
Please, stop! I'm lost. I need to get to the lower track as quickly as possible.
Oliver was happy to help. Take the left track. And Gordon raced on. Gordon arrived at another fork in the track. He didn't know which way to go. Then he saw Duck chuffing over a bridge.
Please stop! I'm lost and I'm in a hurry.
Duck was happy to help. You must take the track on the right.
Thank you.
And Gordon steamed off. At last, Gordon puffed onto the lower track. He could see the logs had fallen across Stanley's line. Then he saw Stanley chuffing around the bend. Gordon blew his whistle long and loud.
Stop, Stanley! Stop!
Stanley applied his brakes and screeched to a halt, just in front of the logs. Soon, Rocky arrived. He cleared the logs in no time.
I'm sorry, Stanley. This was all my fault. I wanted to take a shortcut. I wanted to pick up the very important passengers. But now, I want you to collect them.
Stanley was delighted. Later, the very important passengers were all on board Stanley's passenger cars. Stanley felt very proud. Gordon puffed in to collect the workmen.
I won't be taking any shortcuts this time.
Stanley laughed, and Gordon smiled at his new friend. Please, unload these at once. Freddie had told Colin to wait for him, but Colin didn't want Freddie to get into trouble. Yes, sir. Then Mr. Percival went to look for Freddie. Soon, Freddie puffed up to Colin. I waited for you, but Mr. Percival told me to finish the job. It's all done now. He was very pleased. Freddie looked down at the canal. He wasn't pleased at all. The lights, presents, and the tree were floating away on a barge. The children would soon arrive at Mr. Percival's house, and there was nothing there for the party. And there was nothing at the wharf either. Now no one will have a party, Freddie huffed to himself. And I still haven't found Mr. Percival. He felt terrible. I must stop the barge. Then Freddie saw Mr. Percival. He knew what he had to do. Freddie chuffed over to see Mr. Percival. Where have you been? Freddie told him all about his idea to have the party at the wharf. It was a surprise for Colin, sir. Colin has never been to a party. Mr. Percival thought having the party at the wharf was a very good idea. But you should have asked me first. Oh, yes, sir. If I work quickly, I can still put everything right. All right, Freddie, but hurry now. Freddie raced to catch up with the barge. He called out to the bargeman. Stop! Please turn around and go back to Colin. All right, Freddie. Freddie steamed back to Colin. He told Colin all about the party. I wanted to have a surprise party for you. For me? Colin was delighted and surprised. Soon, Colin was unloading everything for the party. Now, Freddie felt very happy. He steamed away to Mr. Percival's house. Freddie whistled to the children. The party is now at the wharf. And they whooshed away. All the other engines were waiting at the wharf, even Thomas. Presents were piled high. The tree was covered in lights. And so was Colin. What a wonderful party! Thank you, Freddie! Freddie was delighted. All the engines whistled and tooted. The children cheered and cheered. It was their best winter holiday party ever. Still there. Toby mustn't see Flora. Flora, we are late to pick up my load. We must go to the docks. If you say so, Thomas. And they puffed quickly away. At the docks, Thomas was coupled up to his large load to take to Great Waterton. Thomas was sure Toby would now be leading the parade. Come on, Flora. Flora's axles ached, but Thomas steamed strongly. Thomas and Flora puffed up to the junction. Then there was trouble. Flora had chuffed too far. She had run out of coal. I'm sorry, Thomas. Flora's wheels wobbled weakly. Thomas felt bad. He knew it was his fault. Then he heard a chuff, and a puff, and a ring of a bell. It was Toby. Thomas, I've been waiting for you. Who's that? Cinders and Ashes. Toby had met Flora. Neither of them was at the parade. Thomas couldn't have felt worse. Sir Topham Hatt would be very cross. Flora, this is Toby. Toby, this is Flora. Toby looked very happy. Thomas was surprised.
I wanted to tell you, Thomas, that I was too scared to lead the parade by myself. But now, Flora and I can lead it together.
I thought I knew what you wanted, Toby, but I was wrong. Now Thomas had to quickly put right his mistake. Flora, take my coal. I'll pick up more. Puff as fast as you can to Great Waterton. Toby and Flora soon puffed away. Later, Thomas chuffed into Great Waterton. The parade was ready to leave. Thomas's flatbed was uncovered. Flora gasped. She had a wonderful new tram car. Toby was pleased. Thomas watched his two friends lead the first Great Waterton parade. The children cheered. The brass band boomed. Now I have another best friend, and she is a steam tram too. And Thomas smiled his happiest smile. Emily steamed around the final bend and straight into a big puddle of mud. I'll puff through this, thought Emily. Then there was trouble. The track started to sink. Emily was stuck. She didn't feel like excellent Emily anymore. Oh no, now I'll never get Trevor to the airport. Further up the track, Emily saw Murdoch. Murdoch's already there, she huffed to herself. I should have listened to Murdoch. I should have taken the Wellsworth track. Now she needed Murdoch's help. Emily blew her whistle as loud as she could. Murdoch puffed over.
I'm very sorry, Murdoch. You were right. Please, will you pull me out of the mud?
Of course, Emily. Soon, Murdoch was chained up to Emily. With a huff and a chuff, he pulled her out of the mud. Thank you so much, Murdoch. Emily puffed up to Farmer McColl's. Trevor was waiting. I must take you to the airport right away, Trevor. Emily pumped her pistons. Then she stopped. I know what I have to do, Emily thought. Murdoch, which tracks would you take to the airport? The tracks on Gordon's Hill are still being cleared. You should take the valley route instead. Thank you, Murdoch. And she puffed away. Emily puffed happily along the valley track. Murdoch was right, she thought. Then Emily saw a telegraph pole across the track in front of her. Emily was going to push it out of the way. Then she remembered what Thomas had said. I'd better wait for Harvey, she huffed to herself. Soon, Harvey cleared the track, and Emily was on her way again. Emily pulled up at a junction. Ahead, she saw a shortcut to the airport.
That track is muddy.
Emily remembered what Duck had said about muddy tracks. I don't want to get stuck again, thought Emily. I'll take the longer track. Soon, Emily arrived at the airport. Trevor cleared the runway. Just in time. Jeremy landed smoothly and safely. Sir Topham Hatt was delighted to see his mother. Statue of Proteus. Peter Sam was coupled up to the flatbed. Peter Sam pumped his pistons. The cream churns were heavy, but the Proteus statue was even heavier. Peter Sam puffed and puffed to the top of the hill. Now I can roll down the other side, he thought. Peter Sam raced down the hill. There was a junction ahead. Oh no, this load is too heavy. Help! Peter Sam smashed into a buffer. The cream churns crashed. The junction was blocked.
Bubbling boilers! I'll never be the star of the show now. The other engines can't get through. I've spoiled everything for everyone.
Then Peter Sam heard the whistles of his friends. Duncan, Freddie, and Mighty Mac arrived at the junction. They were surprised at the mess. Peter Sam felt very silly.
I'm sorry. I wanted to be the star of Miss Marvel's show.
He told them about finding the statue of Proteus. The engines gasped.
The statue belongs to us all. Please, will you help me take it to the show?
His friends were happy to help. Duncan chuffed away to find a mechanic for Peter Sam. Mighty Mac puffed to tell Mr. Percival about the statue.
Freddie, will you take Proteus to the show?
Freddie was delighted. It would be an honor. Soon the mechanic fixed Peter Sam's brakes.
Now you're ready to go, Peter Sam.
Later, Peter Sam collected fresh cream from the farm.
I know Miss Marvel's show has started, but all the other engines will be there to enjoy the statue.
Peter Sam chuffed his long way back. Peter Sam puffed up quietly. Miss Marvel was finishing her last story.
Oh my! The statue is still covered. Today, one of our engines found something very special. So this is for all the little engines of the hills, because you are all special.
Everyone gasped at the wonderful statue. The engines whistled. Peter Sam smiled.
We are all stars of the show.
Special too, Rosie thought happily. But it was Emily with the rest of the carnival cars. Rosie's flatbed was now rolling back towards Emily.
It bashed into Emily.
Seats from the big wheel clattered and clanged all over the tracks. Emily was stuck. Rosie chuffed into Maithwaite Station. Nobody waved or whistled. Sir Topham Hatt was cross. I told you to be Emily's back engine.
But I brought the carnival special, all on my own, sir. I wanted to help Emily.
You haven't helped anyone. You have caused confusion and delay. You've left half the train. Now there'll be no carnival for the children.
Rosie felt terrible. She had wanted everyone to be proud of her, and now they were cross.
Please, sir, I know just what to do. I'm a very quick engine. I can collect all the cars. Then I will be Emily's back engine. And we will deliver the carnival special in time.
So Rosie whooshed off as fast as her wheels would whir. First, Rosie collected Rocky. Then she pulled him as quickly as she could to Emily. Emily's tracks were still blocked.
I am so sorry, Emily. I only wanted to help you. Rocky will clear the line. I will collect the other cars. Then we can deliver the carnival special together. Thank you, Rosie.
Rosie left Rocky, and she raced away to collect the first freight car. She picked up the coconut car. Then Rosie collected a new car of sugar, and she raced back to Emily. Rosie had been very quick. Rocky had just loaded the seats back on the flatbed.
I'm ready to be your back engine now.
And together, they set off up Gordon's Hill. Rosie and Emily arrived at Maithwaite. All the children waved at the two engines.
We have delivered the carnival special in time.
That evening, Rosie and Emily watched the children at the carnival. The children were having a wonderful time.
I hope we can work together on another special. The sooner, the better. Working with you is the best of all.
Rosie couldn't have felt happier.